fast Wi-Fi. You use it to connect just about everything, which means having really fast Wi-Fi matters. A lot. That's why Xfinity is breaking the gig barrier and delivering Wi-Fi speeds faster than a gig. It's more than enough speed to power every device in the house. Can your internet do that? Introducing Gig Wi-Fi. New from Xfinity. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit an Xfinity store to learn more. Restrictions apply. Actual speeds vary and are not guaranteed.
Welcome to the world-famous tailgate party, going back to the score phone days. Just a programming note, at this point, I think the Sunday broadcasts, like our other ones, we're probably going to, starting next week, going to when ready. Still a majority of our views come on demand, not necessarily live, and we may wind up going a little bit earlier, but anyway, it'll be the same information, just may not give you enough advance notice to always interact live. But anyway, yes, we are here to stay, but we may do it starting next week like we did with the other days, when, quote-unquote, when ready, but probably before 10 o'clock. But anyway, 5 NFL winners, Joe Duffy's picks, led by a Wise Guy play. Wise Guy plays from Joe Duffy's picks, the biggest bet in all of gambling. Your NFL specialist, Joe Duffy's picks at offshoreinsiders.com. And thank you to Raj Vinoy. I hope I pronounced that right, checking in with us. And like I said, even though we may or may not do it a scheduled live, as I explained, feel free to interact, although also keep in mind that eventually we're going to touch on every game, so I know a lot of people want us to jump ahead and whatnot, but thank you to everybody who joins us, whether it's live or whether it's on Memorex. Now let's get to your news and notes for today. The Colts and the Eagles, obviously the big story here. Carson Wentz making his dramatic return since his season-ending injury late last season. Carson Wentz was obviously the overwhelming favorite. Well, not the overwhelming. He was the favorite for the NFL MVP when he was hurt last year, and we all know what happened with Nick Foles, probably one of the great backup stories in the history of the NFL. But Wentz will be without two key running backs in Jay Ajayi and Darren Sproles. That puts more weight on Corey Clement, who is less than 100%. Wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey is also doubtful. So will Carson Wentz be a little bit rusty? Kind of reminds you of a guy who came back from an injury? Andrew Luck, who's the quarterback of the Colts. Of course, Luck, a few years older, and also was obviously gone for much longer than Wentz, but still, some rust will probably be expected. The Colts will be without running back Marlon Mack, so both of these teams are banged up, and of course, Indianapolis' offensive line perpetually is banged up, and they're less than 100%. Now, keep in mind that Carson Wentz is 11-3 at home against the spread. The Chargers and the Rams are 2-0 by a league-leading 17 points per game margin of cover. Some of you know it as the sweat barometer, and as each games, we got more games under their belt, that stat becomes a little bit more important. But yeah, the Rams are covering by a very large margin, so sometimes the mere spread records can be very deceptive. Really, how much are they covering by? And even, a guy who I enormously respect, Todd Furman, likes to quote a lot of spread records. And but the one thing he doesn't do is the margin of cover, and I think that's very important. How much are they covering by? Yes, Eric Jackson, an Eagles fan, or if he is from the Philadelphia area, he probably pronounces it Eagles. He says his Eagles are definitely banged up, and that's for sure. We were talking about that. The Phillip Rivers, 16-2 as a road underdog of 4 or more. Now that is especially significant. Why? What's that term? If you've been a long time client of mine, you've heard me use the term predictably unpredictable time and time again. I've always said that Phillip Rivers is much like that. These predictably unpredictable quarterbacks, with Rivers probably the all-time number one guy. For guys like Phillip Rivers and Matt Stafford, when they're big underdogs, it's a general rule, pretty good to go with. When they're big favorites, pretty good to go against. Jay Cutler, he's another candidate for the all-time Jeff George. You've heard me give this spiel a few times. And I'm not really a big live betting guy. It's one of those things where, like I said, I'm not a degenerate gambler. I'm a degenerate handicapper, and I become so obsessed picking, sides and totals on these. And by the time the games get underway, I just want to watch the games and relax, although put relax in quote there, air quotes. But Phillip Rivers, if I were a live bettor, I think anytime Phillip Rivers is down by double digits, I'd bet him on the live line. Anytime he's up by double digits, I'd bet against him on the live line. Well, not each and every time, but yeah, Rivers is the ultimate box of chocolate. So the fact that he is 16-2 as a road underdog of 4 or more does not surprise me at all. Teams with substantially worse ATS margins are 176 and 113 against the spread. That would favor the Chargers. Big favorites in non-divisional games versus good rushing teams go under 35-7. Now, Chargers tight end Antonio Gates is probable, but keep in mind, although he's the greatest tight end in the history of the game, although some might say he's only the second greatest tight end in the history of the Chargers, he's one of the best tight ends in the history of the game, but he's still past his prime. So that's not really that big of injury news. It's not going to affect the line all that much. But wide receiver Travis Benjamin is doubtful. And, of course, this is no travel issues for the so-called road team. The free pick here, I'm going to go with the San Diego Chargers. The LA Chargers. There you go. I don't care how big of an NFL fan you are. At one point, you're going to forget what town that the Cardinals are in, the Chargers, the Rams, even the hardcore NFL fans. It's tough to keep track of this. The Chargers plus the 7. We're going to go with Mr. Predictably Unpredictable and the NFL being a regression to the mean sport. That is your free pick for me, Joe Duffy's Picks. And you can see my premium portfolio. LIB Sports says he likes the Chargers with the points, and obviously we do as well for the reasons I just stated. And of course, one of the many sports books we recommend, mybookie.ag. Show your support for this free information. You'll get paid. Everything you want from a sports book, you'll get. But please use a promo code Duffy, DUFFY, and that shows your support for this podcast. The Bears and the Cardinals. Cardinals are 0-2 by minus 20.2 points per game against the spread. Teams that scored a combined 9 or fewer points their previous 2 games combined, though, are 50, 31, and 3 against the spread. But, and we, like I said, I report, you decide, 15 and 16, though, as home underdogs. But again, NFL, a regression to the mean sport. And as much as road favorites are usually the sucker bet, it's moderately surprised that this regression to the mean angle says the exception is when a team is a home underdog. But back to the regression to the mean, teams off a 30-point or more loss are 190 and 151. Cardinals star wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald is expected to play, but he will probably be playing through an injury. And like I said, this is for the fantasy football players and the gamblers alike. The Bills and the Vikings. Bills are 0-2 by minus 20 points per game on the so-called sweat barometer or against the spread. So yeah, the Bills have not been coming close to covering. They're getting a few points here, though. Vikings injury-riddled running back Dalvin Cook is out. He only has 26 carries for 78 yards. But when you're laying a ton of points, with Cook being that breakaway guy, a guy who can when he's healthy, can run for 60 yards. He's, kind of a very poor man's Barry Sanders, where he's a breakaway runner. Not having him in a game where they're a big favorite, that's a pretty key injury. Vikings defensive end Everson Griffin is questionable. Remember, he started in every single game he's been healthy since 2014. So he is a key injury. Bills defensive end Shaq Lawson started all 11 games he's played in the last 2 years is out. Again, teams with a substantially worse ATS margin, regression to the mean angle, 176 and 113, that would favor the Bills. And the Bills' troubled running back LaShawn McCoy is doubtful, but expected to warm up and test those ribs. LaShawn McCoy, I don't know, there's some similarities between us, at least as far as our lives are concerned. We were both born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We both lived in Marlton, New Jersey, which I still consider, my quote-unquote hometown, and now he lives in neighboring Milton, Georgia. Completely meaningless, but, sometimes I like to do some name-dropping and whatnot. Favorites of 14 or more have, historically, they haven't necessarily been very good plays, but recently, 11-2 against the spread, and Tom Brady has a little bit to do with that. Vikings have gone under. The Vikings are 25-9-1 at home under Mike Zimmer. They are a good play against the spread. And yes, Brian Carter, thank you for joining us. And who knows, with this interaction, maybe we will keep to the Sunday live time. I explained that we're certainly going to do the Sunday broadcast. It may or may not be live because still a majority of our viewers do come on demand, and we may just do it when available and go a little earlier. But we'll see. I'll make a decision. I'll study the numbers, etc. Packers, but yeah, we'll be here next Sunday. And every Sunday from there on in, although I'm going to visit my son in college in a couple weeks, so we may miss 1 week. But anyway, the Packers and the Redskins have gone under both games by a massive margin. Under both games by 15.8 points per game. Packers superstar Aaron Rodgers is probable, and he's worn the Superman cape when there's been some questions about his availability. Packers also walking wounded, though, in the secondary. Green Bay has gone over 24-7 their last 31, including 14-2 on the road. Washington, though, a dangerous home underdog, 7-4 straight up their last 11 as home underdogs. And there's where my main man, Brian Carter, couple plays that he likes. And yeah, as a general rule of thumb in the NFL, going with underdogs is a good play. Cowboys and the Cardinals, the Cowboys and the Cardinals, that's a typo there. The Cowboys and the Seahawks, hopefully I didn't post any wrong notes there. The Cowboys have gone under 2-0, minus 13.8 points per game. No real surprise there. The Cowboys have a tremendous defense, but and Adrian Holmes, I don't know if you're related to Priest Holmes, Kansas City and the 49ers over. Yeah, we will talk about that in a moment. In fact, that's actually our next game. So I will talk about that game in just one moment. The Cowboys and the Cardinals, perennial all-pro safety, I just did it again. Cowboys and the Seahawks, perennial all-pro safety Earl Thomas is questionable for Seattle. Cowboys off injured Sean Lee. Now looks like he's probable. Arizona's going under 16-5 at home. 49ers and the Chiefs over Adrian S. Be careful because that's going to be an obvious public play, and it is. And we will have all the public plays when it comes to ATS as well as the biggest line moves, and we're going to have the biggest sharp moves. Yeah, the Chiefs have the odds makers caught up to them. That's obviously a very high total, and can Mahomes keep up this pace? It's crazy how the Chiefs. Look, they're not going to keep up this pace, and the NFL is regression to the mean when it comes to totals as well. Yeah, their star defensive back Eric Berry is out, so that says Jimmy Garoppolo. That's going to make things a lot easier for him. And the 49ers secondary is also banged up against KC's explosive offense. Jimmy Garoppolo is 4-1 straight up and against the spread in his career as underdog. Kansas City 3-6 straight up as favorites, and Andy Reid is a coach who a lot of people, myself included, say he's great at preparing, but he's not the world's greatest game coach. And Reid does. Even people who don't gamble and people who have been following him since his days in the Eagles. Andy Reid does have that tendency to win games that he shouldn't and then lose games that he should, so that's not a surprise. I will say this, Adrian. Yeah, Kansas, especially with these injuries, and in some respects, Kansas City reminds me of their regional rivals, the St. Louis Rams, with Kurt Warner, that their offense may be so explosive and their defense so questionable that they may not be able to set the totals high enough. It's so much more fun to root for overs, especially in games that are expected to see a lot of points than it is the under. I would actually lean as much as it's kind of a square thing to see a high total and then say the game's going to go over the total. I do think that the Chiefs may be much like the Rams were under Kurt Warner, where the odds makers are just still behind them. I mean, I just think, and it's not so much their offense is great. Their offense is very good, and Mahomes, give Andy Reid credit. That was a ballsy move in saying, look, I got a proven quarterback, a proven winner, but I'm going to go with my young guy. But still, they play that high tempo, which is, I always say that pace is so much more important than offensive and defensive competency. And I think that the Chiefs have both offensive competency, some defensive incompetency, and most importantly, they like to play up-tempo. So as much as it kind of goes against my nature to say, go with a high total over, yeah, Adrian, I would probably agree with you. Well, not that you made a statement, you asked, but your implied statement there in your question, I would tend to agree with. The Saints against the Falcons, away underdogs playing their first game in week 3 or later, our first road game in week 3 or later, actually 43-26, and that would benefit the Saints. And the Saints starting linebacker, Manti Te'o, is out. Falcons star running back Devontae Freeman likely won't play. Of course, keep in mind Atlanta's defense has already lost starters Deion Jones and Keanu Neal. This is not new news because it happened in week 1, but it's still very big. I mean, it's really against the Saints, very prominent, much more important against the Saints than it was against Carolina. The Dog is 7-2 against the spread in the series with 5 outright wins. Yes, this has been an underdog series, to say the least. You know, we've said from a handicapping standpoint, we've researched it. People say, throw out the point spread, or people don't do gambling. Throw out the records when these teams meet. More times than not, that's not necessarily true, but yeah, in this series it certainly has been. The Broncos and the Ravens, away dogs playing their first road game in week 3 or later, 43-26. We just talked about that. The Broncos, Denver is 2-0 straight up by a combined 4 points per game. And yes, Brian Carter talks about the Saints +3, but the line has moved. We will talk about the biggest line moves at the end of this report, and I know that line has been going crazy. Denver's, and Bryant says, and in fact we can check the live lines, he says it's now a pick, which would have happened during our broadcast for sure, but we can check those live lines as well. Make sure you do visit offshoreinsiders.com for those the sports books, the most thoroughly vetted sports books. Denver's Vance Joseph, the worst spread quarterback in the NFL the last 2 years at 4-12-1. Ravens John Harbaugh, third best coach in the NFL with at least 8 days rest, is 19-11-2. Joe Flacco is 46-24-4. The first half line at home. The Ravens linebacker C.J. Mosley, a game-time decision. 60% chance of light rain. Weather hasn't been a major factor this year. Slight factor in this game. Denver 1-9 against the spread on the road. Ricky Rucker says the Colts and the Eagles going under. Yeah, we alluded to that. Obviously, Philadelphia is minus a lot of weapons, and even though they do get their franchise quarterback back, he's probably got to handicap. There's some possibility of some rust. We talked about the Colts' offensive line being banged up, and although maybe just the opposite with Andrew Luck, the rust is gone, he doesn't have a lot of protection, so that would certainly seem like a pretty smart under. There's plenty of reasons. The injury report alone, basically the injury report, both of those teams have key injuries, so that would seem like a pretty good play, Ricky Rucker. Blowout of the day, yes, Brian Carter says the Ravens. We will have the big line moves at the end of this report. The Titans and the Jaguars. Jacksonville running back Leonard Fournette is doubtful. He has not, though, been ruled out. In fact, I'm actually going to go to see the latest line moves. I'm obviously broadcasting this live, and Bryant is talking about some of those big line moves that have happened. Star cornerback Jalen Ramsey has been upgraded to probable for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So there's obviously some good news, and there's been some bad news on the injury front for Jacksonville. Quarterback Marcus Mariota will not start for the Titans, but he's expected to be available as a backup to Blaine Gabbert. That was much like last week. We told you both guys would play, and of course they did. Raiders and the Dolphins, Florida-based teams. This is a surprise here. I'll be honest with you, this is a surprise. Florida-based teams are only 57, 95, and 3 with a temperature above 80 degrees, including only 36.3% at home. Now, why is that a surprise? I've quoted Dan Marino, who has said that he believes it is tougher for a cold weather team to go to hot weather than vice versa. And, that's kind of been my anecdotal observation, but the truth is I haven't really weighed that heavily. But the stats say otherwise. Florida-based teams actually do not do well in hot weather, especially at home. Derek Carr, last 9 for Oakland as quarterback, have been under. Carr, you add him to the list, who looked like he was going to be the next one. We talked about Marcus Mariota earlier. Of course, we know that Jameis Winston is still suspended, but there are so many guys that look like they were going to be the next one in their rookie year, and since then have regressed. Now, of course, Carr, among those who have been injured, it's Deshaun Watson, I think, is one of the more interesting stories. Can he follow up a great rookie year, especially coming off of an injury? He hasn't had all his weapons, but anyway, yeah, Carr is definitely regressed. All 9 of those have gone under by an average of 7.2 points per game. 9 straight unders, under 13-4 since the start of 2017. Carr has, making him the top under quarterback in the NFL in that span. Road teams off of road loss, 75-32. That would benefit Oakland. That's always been a great angle. People think, teams are playing back-to-back road games, and it's a tough spot for them, and especially when they look poor the previous week. People definitely overreact to what has happened the previous week. That is something very key. And yeah, Brian brings up a good point. He says, Jags game is a pass for me. That will be an ugly cover for anyone who plays it. But that's one of the keys. You've got to be willing to win ugly. Like I've said, there is nothing more boring from a gambling standpoint, or nothing less exciting. I'm not going to say boring. It's not boring. But, for example, rooting for the under, especially on a low total. And maybe someone might argue it's even tougher from a rooting standpoint to bet on the under in a game that's expected to be high scoring, because you never feel safe. But you do have to be willing to win ugly. We've talked about that. I mean, that can mean a lot of different things. But yeah, do not make bets based on what is more fun to root for. That's why the public likes favorites. That's why the public likes overs. You do have to be willing to win ugly, especially in the NFL. Said it many times, NFL is a regression to the mean sport. As a general rule of thumb, if you go with the colder and or inferior team, you're going to do well in the long run. So you have to be willing to win ugly in the NFL. Giants and the Texans, yeah, people, I don't think there's much of a letdown in the NFL. My research has proven that. But I report you decide. The Giants' possible letdown off of that Dallas loss. They'll be minus Eli Apple with a groin injury, Oliver Vernon, ankle injury, 2 key starters out for the Giants. And the Patriots. And there we go. We continue to pass along some of the comments. We appreciate all the feedback, and it looks like most of it has come from YouTube today. But thank you to those who are watching on Periscope. I think in week 1, most of our comments came from Periscope, but we appreciate everybody who is watching live and anyone who is watching and listening on the on demand. And yeah, if you're joining us in the middle of this, remember you can watch it from the beginning on demand wherever you are watching this. Patriots and the Lions. Detroit 0-2 by minus 20 points per game against the spread. Again, they're failing to cover by 20 points per game. Detroit has gone over both of their games by 14.8 points per game. Trouble but mega talent at wide receiver Josh Gordon, probable to make his debut for the Patriots, but that's not etched in stone. He's not 100% healthy, and we know that he doesn't have it upstairs. But this could be this could be Josh Gordon, we always said, has the biggest upside of any player in the NFL. And that's why I think a lot of people, Cleveland was kind of the chic bet on all the season overs and the big long shot to win the Super Bowl. Everyone's looking for that big long shot, etc. Gordon is dangerous. Could this be another Randy Moss type thing for the Patriots? Maybe. He certainly has the physical talent. And Adrian Holm talks about the Patriots and Lions over. Well, Adrian does like those overs. Matt Stafford is one of those guys that I always say is predictably unpredictable. When things aren't going well, and he's a big underdog, is usually when he plays his best. And as we said, if Josh Gordon does play, they're going to use him. And anytime you got Josh Gordon in a game, you could see some long touchdowns. So, yeah, that would seemingly be a decent play. New England, 24-2 on the road, if not laying 7 or more off of a loss. And the average score of 31-17. Now, keep in mind, this is where they're messing around with the juice. The line is 6.5 or 7, depending on the juice. And yes, Adrian verifies he does like betting over. Well, that makes you very much, you got a lot in common with the public. All right. I know, I think it was Bryant was checking some of those line moves. Here's what I've got. He says he's got Atlanta down to a pick. And I will take a look at some of the books I bet with. I still got Atlanta at -2 after opening at -4. But the biggest line moves, Baltimore did go from 3.5 to a 6-point favorite against Denver. Houston went from 3.5 to a 6-point favorite to the Giants. Jacksonville went from 6.5 to a 9-point favorite. Even saw earlier today they were 10, but that has much more to do with the injury information. Marcus Mariota, obviously. But the most important thing is shop around. Shop around. And I don't know if Bryant was looking at a high juice. Probably where you saw Atlanta a pick, they were probably laying some big juice. But visit offshoreinsiders.com. You definitely want to shop around for the best lines. And we got all the best sports books at offshoreinsiders.com. And, Kansas City went from 4.5 to 6.5 point favorite against San Fran. Kansas City, as long as they keep winning, they are going to be a public team. The biggest public bets in terms of percentage of bets, so it doesn't matter. When we talk about percentage of bets, that means a $10 bet counts the same as a $1,000 bet. Some people would say this is square bets. New England and Chicago. New England far and away, by the way, New England is the biggest consensus play of the year as far as public bets. And Chicago, the public likes betting road favorites. No surprise on either one of them. Then followed by Jacksonville and Minnesota. Percentage of money, where a lot of people think it's sharp. Now again, the sharp money doesn't have to be, doesn't always conflict with the square money. So when we talk about percentage of bets and percentage of money, sometimes they can conflict, sometimes they will be the same. Well, New England is both a public and a money play. New England far and away the biggest money play in terms of percentage of money, followed by Seattle and Carolina. And yeah, Bryant, MyBookie and 5 Dimes, both very good sports books indeed. But as far as Atlanta being a pick now, I am sure it is heavily juiced. In fact, let me just see the, see, I still have it at -2. So you're probably seeing Atlanta, a pick in -140 or something like that. But I will take a look at all my sports books. Obviously, I'm here live, so I can't go and check all my sports books. Although I used to do these videos for SBR, and they're very good as far as following the best lines. And that's one thing that Brian does bring up a great point indirectly, or reminds me of a very good point. When you're shopping around for lines, it's not just about the point spread. It's really about the juice. And it really depends. Obviously, when you're talking about 2.5, 3, that can be worth maybe about 9 cents. But for the most part, when you're talking about a half a point, and it's not going on or off of the key number of 3, I prefer the lower juice. Like, for example, I would bet -5.5 and -102 rather than, -5, -110, as an example. So it's very important not just to look at the line, but look at the juice. And that's kind of, All right, he says, all right, he's got a 1 point line. And yeah, 1 point line, and it may be juiced. I'll take a closer look. But yeah, that is very important. As some of you know, if you followed me, I'm also, the only thing I love almost as much as betting on sports is going to restaurants. And restaurants where they sneak it in on you, their profit is soft drinks. You know, they pay you pay $2 for a soft drink, which costs them like 30-something cents. Well, the sportsbook version of that is they will often bait some people with what looks like a much better line, but then it's heavily juiced, and people are like, oh, wait, you know, I can get +6 instead of +5, and then they don't even notice that they're laying, you know, -122. So don't just look at the line, Brian. Take a look at what the juice is. But yeah, as soon as I get done this broadcast, I'll take a look at it a little bit further, though I already do have my bets in. What are my bets? Who are the biggest plays? OffshoreInsiders.com has that answer. All right, like I said, thank you for the interaction. Maybe we do decent amount of interaction. Maybe I will stick to the live Sundays. As I said, we're still going to be doing Sundays. May or may not be live because still a majority of the views do come on demand and whatnot. But yeah, we'll be throughout the week. We'll do a broadcast tomorrow. Not scheduled, just basically once I compile the information, I'm going to go on. And all right, I'll commit to it. We'll do it live. We'll do it scheduled live next Sunday at 10 a.m. And then other days, we'll do it when the information is available. Thanks for everyone joining us. Remember, OffshoreInsiders.com, not only for the best sports picks in the world, but most importantly, or arguably even more importantly, the strongest picks in the industry, winners going back to the score phone days.
At Lowe's Just for Pros event, now through January 29th, you'll find deals on your go-to brands like HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams. Right now, get 25% off 5-gallon pails of Showcase Interior Paint Plus Primer. With one-coat coverage, this paint gives you great results quickly, so you can keep your jobs moving with speed and efficiency. And with its advanced stain and scrub resistance, you can be confident your work will last for years to come. Don't miss the Just for Pros event, now at Lowe's, the new home for pros. Offer valid through 1/29, U.S. only.